So there are several habits that your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents would have practiced every day that we no longer do as a society, and they make huge differences in your health, more differences than any gimmick that you're going to see on social media. And best of all, these things are free or very cheap. So the first thing I want you to do is to imagine your great-great-grandma and how she would have woken up in the morning. The first thing that she would have done after getting out of bed and getting dressed is going outside, getting wood to start her fire, getting water from the well if she had one, feeding the animals, and she was doing something incredibly important for her hormonal health while doing this. She was getting direct sunlight into her eyes during the first 30 minutes to an hour after waking up. Yes, that is incredibly important, and it makes a huge difference in your overall health because it is one of the biggest factors in having a healthy circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is kind of a buzzword these days, but it's basically the clock that runs your body and tells your body when to release hormones, how much, etc. This 5 to 10 minute little hack of getting sunlight every morning is going to make a huge difference in your life. It's absolutely free. The last time I checked, they haven't been able to tax sunlight yet. And quite a few health experts think that you can really help your hormones if you're having any kind of hormonal issue just by resetting your circadian rhythm, which is what you are doing. It helps us produce more melatonin. It elevates serotonin levels, and so we're in a better mood. And this is such a simple thing. But think about how most of us wake up. We probably roll out of bed and then turn on all these bright synthetic lights, and then we sit down and scroll our phone, and we are just completely messing up the signals that are supposed to be sent to our brain on how our hormones are supposed to be released throughout the day. You know, it's incredibly fascinating. When I was researching this topic, I found out that every single organ in our body responds to light, and even the ones that are deep, dark down inside of us, they respond to signals that our bodies receive from light. So we are truly light sensitive creatures. We need it to survive. We will not work properly without it. And then after you get this first 5 to 10 minutes of sunlight into your eyes, and it has to be direct sunlight, you can't be looking through a window or wearing sunglasses. And I should mention, if it is a very overcast or cloudy day, you might need to spend longer outside, up to 30 minutes if it's really gray and cloudy. But after getting that initial light, it's even better if throughout the day you can kind of take little light breaks. You go outside and just get a few minutes of light into your eyes and let your body know what time of day it is by the light. You really will notice an increased energy difference. I really notice a difference. I think all of us see that when we're outside all day, we feel so much better than when we are cooped up inside. And then at the end of the day, if at all possible, watch the sunset. Watching the sunset, just the angle of those rays of sunlight increases our melatonin. All of this actually helps prevent eye problems that can come later in life. Those rays of light from the sunset, the angle of those rays tells your body it's time to start slowing down, get ready for bed, and you're going to produce even more melatonin. So many people are taking expensive melatonin supplements, but there's a lot of health experts saying that they aren't really good for you. They are bypassing your body's natural production, and you're getting a lot more than you would naturally. It's just not the same and can cause a lot of problems, especially in children. The next thing I'm going to talk about is just something that was part of daily life. And I want to mention, if you are interested in old-fashioned wisdom and living like your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, I have a great video on tips from how they ate during the Great Depression that I'm going to link below. So a few years ago, I was talking to someone I know who had been in a convent. And in this convent, they lived a very simple life. They rarely talked on the telephone. They didn't have cell phones. They didn't have television or radio. And they mostly stayed within those 4 convent walls, just growing their own food and praying and just living a very simple, healthy life. Well, she ended up leaving this convent, but she told me the day she left, she went out shopping with one of her friends to get some things she needed. And she had what most of us will call a very relaxing day. She went out shopping with a friend, had some lunch, came home, put away her stuff, and laid down for bed. Instead of going to sleep right away, she noticed all these lights flashing in front of her eyes and kind of could hear noises. It went away after a few minutes and she was able to go to sleep. But the next day she realized that she must have been kind of detoxing from all the information and stimuli that her brain had received. She had been living such a quiet life, and then suddenly to go out and be so stimulated like that was kind of a shock for her brain. This made me think, because most of us, on top of shopping and visiting with friends, we're exposed to social media, television, radio, doing all kinds of different things. And so I looked online and found that a study had been done that showed that we on average get 15.5 hours of information, 1,000 pages. That's a book the size of The Hobbit, and our brains have to process that information every day. That has to be extremely stressful and be a big cause of anxiety in our lives. And you know that so many people are anxious or stressed out today. So the number one thing that our grandparents did to deal with stress and that I have found helpful is meditation. Now, maybe some of them didn't have actual meditation throughout their day, but they all had quiet time where they could sit and process what went on throughout the day. They weren't wearing earbuds. They had long periods where they were walking, working in the fields, just doing housework, and they weren't being constantly intruded on by social media, text, phone calls, television, radio, you name it. So I think most of us know that meditation is a very healthy practice, but maybe we have the idea that we have to be sitting cross-legged or in some other kind of funny position with water fountains in the background in a perfectly clear space. And perhaps that is the Eastern meaning of meditation. But in Western culture, meditation, especially in the Christian tradition, just meant taking an elevated idea like from scripture and taking that thought, thinking about it, processing it, applying it to one's own life, and talking to God in the meantime. And meditation is incredibly good for our health. Not only does it lower our stress, our blood pressure, just great for our overall heart health, it actually increases your brain's plasticity, which just means how your brain can adapt to things. So they did a study where they compared the brains of 25-year-olds who didn't meditate with 50-year-olds who did meditate, and the 50-year-olds' brains were just as adaptable as the 25-year-olds. So if you don't want to be an old grouchy person, make 15 to 20 minutes a day and sit down and meditate. I like to take my Bible or some spiritual reading in the morning and sit down and really think about things, talk to God. And this really just helps put everything in perspective. If there is anything that's bothering me, anything that is giving me anxiety, it really just seems to go away and shrink when you look at the big picture. I know I see so many moms on social media complaining that they are stressed all the time or that they are not patient with your children. If you feel like you have a problem being impatient with your children, take those extra few minutes to sit and meditate. I promise you will notice a huge difference. I know I did. So the next thing that our great grandparents did all the time without thinking about it is something that's kind of trendy today. A lot of us know about it, but I think not everybody's doing it properly. And that is they hydrated themselves well. Your great grandparents didn't have to walk around with water bottles all the time. I'm talking about people living in a rural setting, by the way, but people back in the day would mostly have been drinking well water, or even further back, they would have been drinking fermented beverages, maybe herbal teas. They weren't just drinking plain tap water that had been processed and had a lot of chemicals that had been run through it. So most of the time they were drinking a lot higher quality water than we have access to today. On top of that, they were not being bombarded by the large amount of toxins and chemicals that we have to deal with. So their body didn't even need as much water as we do today. So of course nowadays everybody's talking about electrolytes, and I do think electrolytes are very important, but they don't have to be super expensive. On top of these electrolytes that you see advertised costing a lot, some of them have had some bad media because of ingredients that weren't optimal, ingredients they weren't mentioning. So I make my own electrolyte drink out of salt, potassium, magnesium, stevia, and lemon powder. The salt I grind up in my coffee maker to make it extra fine. And then I just add 75 grams of that, 11.5 grams of potassium, and 11.7 grams of magnesium. And this is going to make you a 30-day supply of electrolytes. But most of us like to add a little bit of flavor. And most of the homemade electrolyte recipes I saw, you had to either do fresh fruit, or there were things I didn't care for in the flavoring. So I tried several things, and I found this lemon powder on Amazon. It's just freeze-dried lemon juice. It is so good. I think it's about 12 bucks a bag, so a little pricier than some. It makes 65 servings, but I find the flavor is so good, and it's still cheaper than buying your own electrolytes, and there's absolutely nothing bad in it. So you take a teaspoon of this lemon powder and a half teaspoon of stevia powder, or for the whole recipe, it'd be 30 teaspoons of lemon powder and 15 teaspoons of stevia powder. You could use monk fruit or any other natural sweetener that you like as well. and just mix it all very well. And then to make yourself one serving of this drink, you take a little under 2 teaspoons of this powder and just mix it in with water. I find this is the cheapest and easiest way to hydrate. I like to put these in my kids' water bottles when I take them to school, and I really notice a difference, especially in my energy levels when I am hydrating properly. Just losing 1 to 2% of your water, of your body's water, impairs cognitive function, your focus, and your mood. So hydration is definitely super important. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is something we all know is healthy, but I don't think we know how healthy it is, and that's walking. So I don't know if you've ever been to Europe, but you probably know someone who's been to Europe, and so many times they come back and they say, I ate so much food, but I actually lost weight while I was in Europe. And they usually attribute this to the better quality and better variety of foods that are available in Europe. And I definitely think this is a factor in losing weight when you're in Europe. But I think another big thing is that you walk everywhere. European cities are made to walk in, and our ancestors were constantly walking all the time. And walking is so good for you. I think so many of us think that we need to be doing the latest fancy exercise that we've seen on some reel on Facebook or on Instagram, when really just walking for 30 minutes a day has huge health benefits. In fact, just walking for 10 minutes is going to boost your mood and increase your cognitive activity. So if you're stuck for something, you need an idea, just taking a quick walk is actually going to help you generate more and better ideas. I've definitely experienced this. If you can take 15 to 30 minutes after eating a meal, especially a large meal, and take a walk, this is great for your blood sugar and for preventing diabetes, because you're getting the sugar from your meal into your blood right away. You're getting it exercised off. Your body is starting to metabolize it instead of turning it into fat like when you just sit down right away after a meal. For me, I just try to walk places that I might think of driving, like the post office is down the road from me, and I hate to say it, but sometimes I will drive there even though it's only a 10-minute walk. I've really been trying to stop that. I just notice a big difference in my mood and energy levels when I am making sure that I walk every day. And walking is also helping you do those other things that I was talking about, getting sunlight in your eyes. And if you're doing it without earbuds, you can be meditating or thinking about things as you are walking. It is really such a helpful practice for such an easy thing to do. Our bodies are definitely made to walk. So I'm Andrea. I'm a mom of 8 trying to raise my family in a healthy manner on a budget. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks so much.